We're here in the heart of Canada, eh? I'm at the capital of Ontario looking for Russ Eberhart to interview him for the History Committee. We'll find him, you betcha. And when we do, we'll interview him for the next round of the CIS history interviews. Well, searching for the interviewee is really thirsty work, and I'm working on it, you can guarantee that. I'm still looking for Russ Eberhart, and so we came up to the penthouse floor of the Delta Center in Ottawa to see if we could see him from the heights. Well, hello everyone. It looks like I did track down Russell Eberhart here in Ottawa. Russ?
You finally found the right bar.
Welcome to the CIS interviews. I'm Jim Keller, the interviewer, and today we have the pleasure of talking with Russ Eberhart, one of the pioneers of our society. So we'll get right to the interview. Russ, we're here in Ottawa for a reason.
Yeah, we're here. I'm stunned still, but I'm with Jim Kennedy and I are receiving the IEEE Pioneer Award in Evolutionary Computation here
at the Computational Intelligence and Security and Defense Applications Symposium. Right. So, Russ, the first question we always ask is, how did you get involved in CI technologies?
Okay, well, I had read something about neural networks back in the days of Minsky, and Minsky had said that the applications to multiple layers was sterile. That was the word he used. And at any rate, when in the 1986-87 time frame, when the Connectionist Working Group published their 3 volumes on neural networks with the proof on convergence of the backpropagation algorithm, I was really lucky because I was at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, and up the road was Terry Sinowski, who was one of the authors. And I remember reading that second volume that has the proof in it, and that call all night. I called Terry the next day, and with a cassette recorder in my hand, I went up onto the Johns Hopkins campus and talked to Terry Sinowski for 3 hours. And I said, "You've done it," because we tried. I was sort of pecking away at the area of neural networks back when I got my PhD, but it was considered to be a very politically incorrect thing to do. But when they proved convergence of the backpropagation algorithm, we immediately applied it to a spike detector for electroencephalography, a neurological application at Johns Hopkins Hospital with Bob Weber, who I think was on the webcast this morning, and Ron Lesser, the neurological surgeon there. So the very first way I got involved was the application in neurology, and we found out through my affiliation with EMBS, Engineering and Medicine Biology Society. I was a member of that. Litsa Tanaku and I were appointed as the first 2 representatives to this thing called the Neural Networks Council. And so we went to the first meeting, I believe it was 1988, but I'm not sure, in Denver, Colorado, and it was the organizing meeting of the Neural Networks Council. Troy Nagel chaired that meeting. Eventually Bob Marks became the first president, but Troy was actually head of that first meeting we had in Denver at NIPS way back.
So, I guess this sort of has already been answered. Was there a person or persons who influenced your involvement in computational intelligence? Obviously,
Terry Sinowski, but also then in the early days, people like Litsa Tanaku and others who were applying this in the areas that we were working in, cardiology and neurology.
And so your involvement in the council and later on in the society, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, Bob Marks was the first president of the council. I was the first vice president. I eventually assumed the job from him. I also held what I consider to be the toughest job I ever did in the council. I was treasurer for one of the IJCNNs, and there were some very, very interesting things that went on between the IEEE and the International Neural Network Society. I think for purposes of the interview, I want to say something, and that is Paul Werbos and I are very good friends, and while we had some very serious disagreements on how things had to be run for the conferences, IEEE is a 501c3. We have certain requirements that are and how we financially manage the conferences. INNS didn't have some of those requirements, and we had some things we had to work out that were not easy sometimes. But it was an interesting road about right then.
So you were part of the first memorandum of understanding gang.
Yes,
right.
I was part of the first memorandum of understanding gang. I also have a letter I just found before I came on this trip. I found a kind of box full of documents I'm going to send to Jim Bezdek in late 1980s and early 1990s. One of them is a letter that's written from Bob Marks to members of the AdCom in 1991, and the sentence I like in the letter is, quote, this is written in 1991, right. Quote, when we become a society next year, unquote, etc. It took a little longer than that.
It did take a little bit longer, but eventually the Neural Networks Council became the Neural Network Society, and then morphed into the Computational Intelligence Society to emphasize its more global reach. So, would you do you have any particular incidents other than that of your time as president of the council, or subsequently, that you consider sort of noteworthy for? I
think for me, one of the sort of the turning point, actually, a turning point, a real pivot point for me was, I'm trying to remember if it was 89 or 90, let's say it was 1990. It was about 6 months after Tiananmen Square, whenever that was. And the IEEE Neural Networks Council got an invitation from People's Republic of China to participate in the first ever Chinese National Conference on Neural Networks in Beijing. Now, the logical person to go to that was Bob Marks, but Bob, because he was president of the council, but at that point, Bob had locked himself in for some kind of a seminar in Seattle and could not go. And so I was at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. There were security concerns and so forth, but I had 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, I got a visa. I got myself over to China, and last year I was keynote speaker at the IEEE International Conference on Swarm Intelligence in Chongqing. It was my 13th trip to China. That established I don't know that I would have had all those travels to China and Japan. We helped set up the Fuzzy Conference in 1993 in Japan. That was also a memorable occasion, and that Bob Marks and I went over. And it was one of those cases where, as we left Japan going to the airport, we thought we had all of these agreements in place, and by the time we came back, we found out we didn't really have all those agreements in place, and we had to sort of start all over again.
So you've had a pretty major impact on the growth of the society, and so we always ask the question: what has the society done for you personally? You feel?
I'll tell you what I think. I thought about that. I think the society, the biggest thing it's done are the friends I've made. The acquaintances. There's not a major city in the world that I can go to that I can't say I know so and so here, and I've probably met them through the activities of the Neural Networks Council. I can go to Asia, Australia, doesn't matter. Here in Ottawa, for example, I've been here before because I'm an IEEE Distinguished Lecturer. And so to me, it's been the personal contacts I've made through the IEEE. I mean, I've gotten benefit from conferences and so on, technical benefits, and I've gotten this and that, but it's been the friends I've made and the acquaintances.
That's a great answer, actually, because I think it resonates with what a lot of the messages that we've been giving in these interviews. We've heard the same kind of response, and it's certainly true. And of course, people have gotten the benefit from knowing you as a result of this. So we've been able to expand in many different ways. So, of course, as Russ pointed out, he's very humble in saying this, but we are here at this particular meeting to give you and Jim Kennedy the award for the creation of particle swarm optimization, which was clearly recognized by the awards committee within CIS as a pioneering activity, and so we're very happy to be able to have you here at this meeting to do that. And so I guess sort of at the kind of as we now wax eloquently about the future, do you have any thoughts for the young people that might be watching this?
Well, I've always encouraged very heavily. I've been a faculty advisor for IEEE student chapter, and when I talk to the students, I encourage them to become members of IEEE because of the network they become part of, because of the publications, the conferences. You can go to some pretty neat places for the conferences. You could also go to some pretty maybe not so neat places sometimes.
That's true too.
But there are always really nice people there, and I think the biggest benefit of IEEE is really an interconnected web of expertise and acquaintances. I found out, I like to tell one story. I found out about the job I went to in Indianapolis. I went out there in the Purdue School of Engineering and Technology, spent 17 years there until I retired into Phoenix Data Corporation. I didn't really retire, but the university called it, and I'm working full-time for Phoenix. But I didn't even know about that job out there. Charlie Robinson called me up, and he said,
"Really?"
He said, "Russ, IEEE," and he was the head of the first wiki in 1994, and we were down in Orlando, and I went to the World Cup, and Robinson said, "Well, there's this job out in Indianapolis you would be perfect for, Russ. You ought to apply for it."
Really?
Yeah. And so I tell my students, this is how you'll find out about, not only do you keep abreast of what's going on in the area, but you now have this whole interconnected web of acquaintances that is going to be very important to you in your professional career.
That's a great answer. So I guess we didn't really highlight the fact that Russ has transitioned from being a straight academic with lots of application activities going on to a new position, which is really application heavy at
Phoenix Data Corporation in Indianapolis. And I'll put a plug in for the company.
Why not?
When I started working there, we had 38 employees. I was half-time last year, 2011. By the time I came on full-time, January 2012, we had about 48 employees. Today it's July in 2012, and I believe we have approximately 70 employees. We're growing quickly, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a wild ride, but I'm enjoying it.
Oh, that's great. And of course, as we pointed out during the interview, Russ is a good example of someone who started out in one area of computational intelligence and is now being recognized as a pioneer in a different area, starting out in neural networks, and he's done a lot of major work there, and then moved and created particle swarm optimization with Jim Kennedy, and is being recognized at this meeting for that. So, Russ, do you have any final thoughts?
Don't think so.
Okay. Well then, let's say, and as we all do when we're being videoed, and this is the Jim Bezdek tradition, we have one final thing that we always say when you're on TV.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. Thank you, Russ.